News, Washington.
I love the way Trump talks. He hates the Jews. He hates Israel. There's nothing he can do about it. Trump is hilarious, man. By far the funniest president we have ever had. It wouldn't be so funny if it wasn't just so out and out sad that this dude is is the president. But as you heard in the intro, Abdul El Sayed defeated Haley Stevens in the Michigan state primaries. But that's really just one piece of a puzzle that the intro sort of started. Progressives, the people that are being called progressives, had one of their strongest nights in many years electorally on Tuesday and really Thursday too. The biggest national story is that the continued success of the left wing of the Democratic Party. Now, you guys know this since I've been here, the 10 years I've been here, going back to being with Brother Booze and Lloyd Fisher in 2016. Yeah, that long ago. I've always railed against the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. It's why I left the Democratic Party, the corporate wing of the Democratic Party, the mainstream, the post-Clinton third way corporate sellout Democrats, and who I believe post-Reagan really hijacked the party and turned the Democrats into a right-wing party. Took it away from its class consciousness, its class analysis, and its class solidarity that really took hold during the New Deal, Great Society, Civil Rights Coalition of the 1930s to the 1970s, which I posit is the most successful political coalition in American history, maybe world history. I mean, by the 70s, Americans had the highest living standard that any people had ever had in the history of the world. So I would say that's pretty damn successful. The Clintons came to power in the 90s with their, Wall Street people, Robert Rubin, Larry Summers, and a lot, Sandy Weal, undid a lot of Roosevelt's New Deal, undid a lot of LBJ's war on poverty, welfare reform, NAFTA, the Clinton crime bill of mass incarceration, Graham Leach Bliley in 1999, deregulating Wall Street, not regulating derivatives, those types of things. And so for the last 30 years, the corporate wing of the Democratic Party has basically had the reins of the party. And ever since, there's been a lot of loss after loss after loss for any of us on the left, whether members of the Democratic Party or people like myself who consider themselves outside of the Democratic Party. And finally, it seems like these things seem to finally be turning around because people are looking at their standard of living decreasing. They're looking at their standard of living decreasing, and they're looking at how rich the rich have gotten. I've talked about this for many years as well. I talked about this throughout the pandemic, just how much richer the elites are going. So if there's not, America's economy has been growing at about 1% per year, so that's not a huge amount of growth. The only people getting rich are the rich. That's it. Everybody else is dealing with higher costs for food, for shelter, for anything else. And so these things are converging at the same time. A lot of people on the left, whether it's democratic socialists, people like Mamdani, or what you're seeing in people like El Sayed, who himself, to who calls himself a capitalist. He says he's not a socialist or a communist or anything, just a left-wing Democrat, which, hey, okay, fine. What I mean? You're seeing sort of this new reckoning of the left. And so the headline race of Tuesday's primaries was the Michigan Democratic U.S. Senate primary between Abdul El Sayed versus Haley Stevens, who had the whole corporate establishment ring. They brought the old Negroes out, like Jim Clyburn, who is one of the most establishment corporate puppets of the Congress, who is, you know, gets more money from the health insurance companies than anybody else. And, you know, they cloak themselves in their blackness and stuff, the civil rights talk, while at the same time helping corporations undercut anything that will benefit black people as a whole and working class and poor people as a whole. But because I'm an old Negro, you can't make fun of me and you can't say anything bad about me and you can't criticize me because, you know, I knew Dr. Martin Luther King in 1978. Well, Dr. Martin Luther King called himself a democratic socialist and supported reparations and thought everybody should have health care in America. So apparently you didn't hang out with Martin Luther King that much. So, you know, Abdul El Sayed was really up against it. And, you know, he had AIPAC really spending, they unloaded the clip. AIPAC unloaded the clip on this race, just like they did against Thomas Massey in the Republican primary in Kentucky a few months ago. They unloaded the clip against Abdul El Sayed. They spent, like, you know, I think $30 million just from UDP, which is the AIPAC adjacent PAC. Now they know everybody hates AIPAC, so now they got UDP out there, the United Democracy Project or whatever, to funnel the money to their corporate sellout Zionist candidates. And they ultimately, Haley Stevens spent $60 million. $60 million. Money. Yes, money. As a part of this race, and in spite of $60 million from super PAC funding against him, El Sayed, he took the race. Haley Stevens had AT&T, BlackRock, which we talked about a lot, Blue Origin, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, the former richest man on the planet, now I think the third richest man on the planet, who owns Amazon, Boeing, Charter Communications, Cigna, Comcast, DoorDash, Ernst & Young, General Mills, General Motors, Goldman Sachs, Guardian Life Insurance, Home Depot, Honeywell, Humana, McDonald's, Principal Life Insurance, Qualcomm, Stanley Black & Decker, T-Mobile, UBS, Verizon, Ally Financial, Applied Intuition, Intuition, okay, BASF, Corning Inc., DaVita, Elevance Health, Inspire Brands, Nielsen, and Nucor. She had all these different contributors to a super PAC and just pouring money into this race, vilifying this dude as a horrible anti-Semite. Meanwhile, you know, Haley Stevens shows you how cartoonish a lot of these people are when they cloak themselves in sort of Zionism. You know, Haley Stevens went out of her way to try to, you know, essentially go where the money is. This is a little bit embarrassing.
And in the United States Congress, I will continue to fight for the people of Israel. I will continue to fight for Israel's existence. Israel comes to me in my dreams. I see Israel's future, and I know that Israel will continue to exist for the Jewish people.
Israel comes to her in her dreams, not the people in Detroit. The people in Detroit, screw them. You trying to be the senator from Michigan, and you ain't worried about the people in I'm sorry, you trying to be the congresswoman from Israel, but it's Israel that's coming to you in your dreams? Israel? Not Detroit, not Flint, where the people still drinking poison water, and you have generations of people who have suffered from mental retardation thanks to drinking elevated levels of lead. Oh no, it's the people of Israel that comes to Haley Stevens in her dreams. So I think you can see why she lost. She definitely was not the type of candidate who had any real charisma. She really didn't have anything going for her other than being a corporate puppet of the establishment. And for many years, that would have been enough. For many, many years, I sat here at this desk, me and Jonathan Booz, then me and Reverend Campbell, and now me by myself, and watched corporate puppets of the establishment win just based on the fact that they're corporate puppets of the establishment, and AIPAC and Wall Street and these multinational corporations can come in and buy elections, and then they'll get a black minister to come out, or they'll get Jim Clyburn to come out and talk about how this, sellout puppet who helped mass incarcerate black people and helped send all of our jobs overseas and helps prevent us ever from having universal health care. This sellout corporate Democrat is the one who's going to fight back against Donald Trump. Nah, y'all lost. You don't get to use that argument no more. You lost. You lost. And you lost in a humiliating fashion. And so now the many of the Democratic base feel very betrayed, and they've seen how unserious the corporate liberals have been about actually doing anything to put up a fight against Donald Trump. And so now they're looking for alternatives. And so, but, unfortunately still, in this race, we did see that black voters still went for Haley Stevens. And once again, a lot of this has to do with the fact that black voters, just like, I guess, white voters, but older people dominate our elections. And older black people are still, God bless all of you. I know a lot of you watching this show, or listening to the show, or watching this show are, older people. But a lot of you guys still watch the corporate media, ABC, NBC, CBS, MS Now, and get the same type of programming that your counterparts, your white counterparts, get from Fox News. And in both instances, it's the corporate puppets of the establishment, the Democratic corporate puppets of the establishment, or the Republican corporate puppets of the establishment. And since many younger black people, and just younger people in general, are politically disengaged and have just sort of been convinced that politics don't matter and electoral politics don't matter, which I think is a mistake, you end up getting a black community that is captured. We are captured. White liberals basically tell black ministers, black leaders to stay on the plantation. And that's what many of us do. And so it's funny, like Haley Stevens, she tried to get, maybe this was successful because, like I said, she did win the black vote. She essentially lied and said that Barack Obama and the Obamas supported her. And she also lied and said that Abdul El Sayed said something sexist about Michelle Obama, which was completely false as well. So I don't know how effective those things were, but like I said, she did win the majority of the black vote. So by a small margin, much smaller than normal. I'll say that, much smaller than normal. Usually the corporate Democrats win a much bigger part of the black vote because, like I said, our vote skews older, people who watch corporate media and are indoctrinated with corporate propaganda on a daily basis. So this is what happens. But that, thankfully, younger generations and a lot of even older people are being what they call red-pilled, I guess. Is that red-pilled or blue-pilled? But whatever, being pilled, and the spell of the corporate wing of the Democratic Party is sort of loosening. They can't just send out black ministers and Jim Clyburn to just get 80%, 90% of black people to vote for him anymore. And so, yeah, ultimately candidates like Stevens still win in those situations, still win the black vote because, again, we are colonized. We're compromised, colonized. White liberals have colonized the civil rights movement a long time ago. We talk about it all the time with the feminists and the LGBTQRSTUV people colonizing the civil rights movement, taking a class-based New Deal, Great Society style movement designed to make up for generations of slavery and Jim Crow laws and segregation, and made it about tolerance and inclusion and all this other nonsense that really doesn't have anything much to do with us. and it allows them to be the main beneficiaries of things like affirmative action and DEI, while we still live in the hood and we're still back here. It also, to me, it's very dangerous to push this idea that black people aren't leftist. I don't know when, you started seeing, that's how you know a lot of these Jim Clyburn types and a lot of these black ministers and all these other black pundits are compromised when they start making, when they start criticizing the DSA, the Democratic Socialists, and other left-wing candidates. Oh, they're just for white people. They're just for, the uppity white people. When if you look at virtually every great black leader in this country's history, they've all been leftist. W.B. Du Bois was a socialist. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were strong anti-capitalist. Malcolm X literally said, "Show me a capitalist, I'll show you a bloodsucker." Those are his words. He was friends with Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. They want you to hate Fidel Castro. Malcolm X was friends with him. Martin Luther King called his ideology closest to democratic socialism. The Black Panthers were Marxist-Leninists. That's what they were. Go read about them. They'll tell, like Bobby Seale's still alive. He'll tell you all about it. But at some point, they colonized, again, the black churches, the black leadership, and started pushing this idea that, yeah, you know what? Black people are corporate puppets too. Just look at Jim Clyburn and Obama and Kamala Harris and these people. That's what black people really are about politically. When that's just a historical nonsense. I'm sorry, it is. The greatest black leaders were leftists. Virtually all of them. You had some, like Booker T. Washington probably skews a little bit more conservative, I guess. Booker T., who I have a lot of respect for, regardless of what some people say. But mostly, most legendary black leaders were leftist. And so we're starting to see, especially with younger generations, millennials and Zoomers, come back to our history, who we were for real, before they colonized our civil rights movement. But that wasn't the only big race happening. We saw some big surprise wins in Tennessee. Justin Pearson won the Democratic nomination in the newly configured Memphis area. We also saw on the Republican side, I think this is important too, because it shows you how weak Donald Trump has become. Andy Ogles, who was a high-profile conservative endorsed by Donald Trump, got mollywopped by Charlie Hatcher after even after they drew the congressional districts. That would not have happened a few years ago when Donald Trump was at his peak influence. That just wouldn't have happened. We have to talk about redistricting. A lot of the primaries reflected newly drawn congressional maps. Tennessee's redistrict maps altered Memphis area districts, creating new political coalitions and making a lot of these incumbent races less predictable. Obviously, there's been charges that it would dilute the urban, I say urban, but really, let's be real, black voting power. And so we have to look up for that. But yeah, we're looking at still just the continued ascension of the left within the Democratic Party and outside of the Democratic Party as well. I've come to a conclusion on this that we need people in the House and outside of the House as well. We need people to get elected who can get elected. And we also need people to be outside, fighting the power, fighting the establishment, maybe, protesting, whatever, who are critics of the two-party duopoly as well. After seeing what this Trump administration has become since it got back in office, I'm convinced more than ever now we need leftists who can actually get elected. And, thankfully we're starting to see some people on the left, the actual left, not liberals, actual left-wing people who are on the right side of the class war, who are class conscious, who, you know, are much more in line with the New Deal, Great Society, Civil Rights Coalition than, say, the third way corporate Democrats of the 90s and the 2000s come to power. And a lot of that came from energizing younger voters. Finally, you know, in a lot of these races, younger people are energized. There was a big fear that Donald Trump and the MAGA had started to make some inroads with young people. That's starting to reverse. We're seeing young people be radicalized in the opposite direction. Grassroots organizing, social media output. These things have all happened. These things have all really had an effect, and so you've seen a number of anti-Israel lobby candidates win. Anti-Zionist, often very left-wing, what are called progressive candidates, other than Abdul Sayed, Will Lawrence in Michigan, Rashida Tlaib obviously was already there in Michigan, Donovan McKinney in Washington, he definitely, John Dureski, and Pramila Jayapal as well. So we're seeing a real reckoning for the corporate wing, the establishment wing of the Democratic Party, which I think is a good thing. I don't have to love these candidates 100%. There's things about Abdul El Sayed I don't agree with. He was a Ukraine war. He supported funding the Ukraine war. I do not. But hey, again, you know, we just have to focus on getting people with left-wing ideals elected. I don't care what party they're in now. Let me get this caller. Hello, caller. You've been on the line for a long time. What's up?
Well, always glad to hear your show.
Well, thank you.
Well, of course, bro. You know, I'm a labor guy, and
Yes,
you know,
yes.
like what's gone on is like just almost unbelievable. You know, and I like to call them what they are. They're Democrats. They say they're Democrats, and they're neoliberals.
Yep.
They're Reagan guys.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I haven't found, as me chatting around, I haven't found any party guys, any Democratic Party guys that even want to talk to me for more than 90 seconds.
Mm.
Why?
Why?
Well, because we have these. We want to have some clarity here. Let's get back to brass tacks. What's this, you know, AI colonialism going to be like when we have no idea whatsoever what's coming? And these fellows are just promoting it like it's going to be their payday, which it will be.
Well, yeah. And both parties, including here in Lake County, are promoting these data centers that will, again, and which is another big part of what happened on Tuesday. People are coming out to vote against the data centers.
You know, even if you did a thing like, let's say, every data center that there is, the population has to have shares of it.
Right.
And enough populous shares to make a difference in a vote. So the population has to have at least 51% of the shares.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get revenue from that. And if you had something, you say, let me see, the idea of having Israeli-type security in America is just an insane thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's on the way.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with you, and that's why it's important to elect these people who are on the right side of the class war and who are not going to sell us out to big tech.
Brother, man, thanks a lot.
It's all good, brother. I got to go to a break. It's 6:41.
Appreciate you being there.
All right, now. Stay listening. All right.
I will.
All right, now. All right, folks. 6:41 in the p.m. here on Friday, August the 7th. We got to go to a break. When we come back, America's at war again. Oh, no. With Spain. America's at war with Spain, apparently. So please stay with us. We'll get into that right after these.